a certain point in defining how it is that you want to walk the world, it becomes necessary to prioritize that vision for how you want to walk the world above all else, including the wants and needs of others. Here's what I mean by that. My life vision is this: to completely and totally love and accept myself so that I can completely and totally love and accept everyone else and thus facilitate healing in the world. Now that life vision, you might be thinking, Kate, that kind of is about prioritizing the needs and wants of others. How would I not be prioritizing the needs and wants of others if I had that kind of a life vision? Here's what I mean by that. Sometimes when people are triggered and they want to pull me down with them, they want to be pessimistic, they have a desire, a want, a need to enact their own pattern that isn't really a match for this vision that I'm trying to walk the world with. Sometimes I need to place a boundary around the amount of influence that I will let that person have on my life. As a for instance, if you have a friend who is constantly complaining, constantly a victim, constantly suffering, it might be necessary for you to place a boundary around how much complaining, victimization, and suffering is in the conversations between the two of you. And I'm talking about doing this with compassion. I'm talking about doing this walking into a space of honoring the fact that this person is in pain. I mean, they're in pain. Nobody who's complaining all the time is a happy person. They're dealing with some stuff. So let's have some compassion for that. And let's also be real about the fact that you are establishing yourself in a different way. And if you're establishing yourself in a different way, that needs to be spoken into. I mentioned in the ebook section of the e-program how, one of the things the inner critic likes to do is say, are you telling me to start prioritizing my wants and needs above those of others, including my children? And if you have kids and you had that kind of a thought come up, or if you just felt like it would be way too selfish to start prioritizing your wants and needs, I gotta ask, how else is anything in your life going to come into true fulfillment if you aren't prioritizing your wants and needs? I also gotta ask, is it in integrity for you to go through this process of prioritizing your wants and needs with a sort of, I don't care about your wants and needs anymore? I'm not talking about saying, this is my focus, it's me, everything else I'm cutting out. I'm talking about expanding your conception of what your wants and needs are so that they include all the things that you've committed to, such as children, because that would be in integrity. I'm talking about walking the world with a clear focus about what you want your life to be about that doesn't discount anyone else's focus either, because they're just off living their lives, doing the best they can. Sometimes this might mean letting go of relationships. However, before you think about letting go of a relationship, I want to talk about this energy vampires subject for just a moment. I think the whole concept of energy vampires is just such bullshit. I think it's such bullshit. Like, come on. How can someone suck your energy away from you if you don't have an open vein? We teach people how to treat us, okay? If the person in your life who's always complaining and suffering and a victim is draining energy because they're always complaining and suffering and a victim, who's providing the willing ear? Let's have a little more compassion than the passive aggressiveness that can so often enter women's relationships, where people stop returning phone calls and emails and stuff. Let's just skip past that. Have the compassion. This is a person who's in pain. And then you powerfully lean into the discomfort of saying something about that dynamic. Don't bail on the friendship until you've at least tried to step into powerfully restructuring it in some way to the benefit of both of you. It's okay to set up boundaries that support you in living a really fulfilled life. And every single time you think to yourself that it's too selfish for you to set up those sorts of boundaries, just remember, what can you give if your well is not full? What can you give? You can also set up mental boundaries. And that's part of what's happening whenever you recognize the voice of the inner critic and then you start reframing the things that it's saying with a tool like redo please. Your inner critic starts to say something that's really disrespectful. Redo please. You've got a boundary around that. You require respectful communication from everyone in your life, and that includes the sides of you that are fearful and triggered. Any 6-year-old can be taught to say something in a nicer way. And I'm going to say that your inner critic, when triggered and fearful, is like a 6-year-old or maybe a 10-year-old that's kind of having a temper tantrum. She's afraid. She's not meaning to sound like quite so hostile as she is sounding, but that's sometimes how it shows up when she's afraid. And so you can listen to the fear without reacting to the fear. You can mentally place a boundary around that inner critic voice by saying, hey, I'm open to hearing that, and I need it rephrased more respectfully. Read it, please. And doing that again and again and again until it is actually phrased respectfully. Commit to your integrity. Commit to keeping the focus on yourself, keeping the focus on the present moment, and remembering that you're in choice. Commit to respectfully speaking your truth. Commit to not perpetuating drama by not speaking into your boundaries. Because when you don't speak into your boundaries and then someone violates them because they don't know what your boundaries are, or even whether or not you're going to enforce them, and then you go to victim mode and go, energy vampire, energy vampire. It's just silly. You're more powerful than that. You get to decide who's in your life. You get to decide how they communicate with you. And you get to decide what kinds of things you're going to do to work with the parts of you inside that are afraid or scared. And I know you can do this.